All right, so at this point, the goofy music will be fading out, and then and then we start the Rader podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if this is really a podcast. We're just talking, right? Like
Sure.
when we get on iTunes, we'll be a podcast.
I look forward to it.
Then your goofy headphones here won't matter as much. But I just thought of another good password.
Goofy headphones?
Goofy headphones at podcasts! ! 1, 2, 3.
Mix it up.
Exactly.
You got to mix it up.
All right, so we're going to talk about passwords. We all love passwords, right? Mm-hmm. How much do you guys like talking to people about how bad their passwords are and how they have to change them?
I had it today, man.
It's not a fun conversation to have ever.
No,
you can't tell a new mother that the password Emma 2017 is a bad password, but it is because you just had a kid and you put her name on Facebook and it's tagged 2017. So now we know.
Don't name your kid 2017.
Not at all.
That's the whole problem.
How is your infant Emma? Is she nice?
I actually did that to a client one time, and I called up and her kid's name was Angela or something. And I didn't know this, but I knew what her password was. I'm like, so how's your daughter Angela? And she's like, how did you know that? I'm like, because your password is Angela.
It's either your child or your dog.
Yep. So by saying, how's Angela, I knew I was going to get a good response. All right, so what are some bad passwords, this classic bad passwords? Hit me.
Password is a classic.
Absolutely.
Password 1.
Nobody will guess password. Password.
How about password 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
That's even better.
It
than
is.
Password 1, 2.
See what's happening, I think, when they use these brute force attacks, doesn't it pretty much roll through?
It just rolls through a list.
And a dictionary, basically.
Yep.
But, all of these are going to be added to that list. So you can't get away by using password and putting a number in front of it, because it's going to be on the list.
Yep. Les wrote up a password policy for us to start adhering to for our clients. And yeah, he says, don't use password 1, 2, 3, 4, admin, engineer, football, hunter, or let me in.
I imagine those change by region.
Yeah,
too.
probably. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sports teams, I'm sure every single sports team of every single sport is probably not a good thing to use.
That's a good one. Yeah. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there using those as passwords.
Absolutely.
Crawfish.
Yeah, crawfish.
Saints
fan. Saints fan 1.
Shrimp boat.
Yep. All right. So, what are bad password practices that we tend to see? We already mentioned using personal information. Another one.
Same password for everything.
Yep. That's another bad one.
Write them down.
I have a unique password for everything that I log into. I know that's insane sounding to some people, but it's not actually that hard to do.
It's not.
If you come up with like something. But
well, sometimes like a formula works too. And I've seen those like password creators where it actually says, all right, the beginning of all of your passwords are going to be this, and then the end of it's going to be based on whatever you're logging into.
Absolutely.
And that's perfectly fine as well. I should be talking close to the microphone.
Do you take like a base word or phrase and then you just add? Is something always the same in your password?
I'm not going to tell you, Brandon.
Nice try.
Turn off my recorder.
Nice try.
Almost had you.
I guess a bad password practice would be putting your password on a sticky note and sticking it to your monitor.
That's a bad one. Keeping it in an Excel file on your computer,
Yeah.
or in Dropbox or Google Docs, a service that scans all of your files as they, for deduplication. And then, you know what? This was a big one for a while, but it went away in the last few years. Just simple character replacement. All right, I'm not going to use password, but I'm going to replace the S's with dollar signs, and I'm going to replace the O with a 0. Well, the hackers are on to you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's in that list. And
Yep.
brute force is going to read right through that.
That was slick a few years
It
ago.
was, and then everybody thought of it, and they're like, "Man, how slick is this?" And then at that point, well, it wasn't slick anymore. All right, so password policies. I have 3 of them listed here. What's a password lockout policy?
It's where you enter in your password wrong too many times.
And then it locks you out.
Locks you out.
Yep. And so that's something that can be enforced on an administrative level. You can say after 5 failed logins. That was a whole thing with the iPhone, right? Like after 10 failed logins, it wipes the data. So there's a lockout policy, and it's just to protect the user. It also protects against brute force attacks because you can only get so many
Before
words
you lose it.
before. Yep. What's password change policy?
A set timer where you have to change your password after 90 days or 45 days or 7 minutes.
Yep. Now, password change policy is kind of changing as people use better passwords. I think the government standard now is if you have a really good, long 32-character password, that's a phrase that you're going to remember, that's not written down, changing it every so often is going to be bad because then you're going to forget it and you're going to have to write it down and do all these other things. So having a good long password and not changing it very often, the government now says is actually okay. Then again, maybe that's the government just trying to get into our stuff. I don't know. What's password complexity policy?
You have to meet requirements, one capital letter, one special character, two numbers,
Yep.
requirements, basically.
The set of requirements to ensure your password is not easily guessed. I heard you talking about that one today.
Yes.
Yep.
I lied a little bit.
It's okay. But I would rather overdo it a little bit because if you say, all right, if your policy is one capital letter and you tell the person you need two capital letters, all you're doing is you're making them a better password. So yeah, you have to have two special characters and two numbers and two capital letters and all your even if that's not the requirement of the system, you're still making a better password for the end user.
Well, you see, the thing was, is the user was saying, why I gotta have such a complex password? You know what I mean? They were saying, why? And I was saying, listen, it's not me, it's you. I'm not requiring this. You need this. And it's not even that you need it. It needs to be complex for your own safety. And she said, oh, I'm never going to remember this. I said, you don't need to remember it. Just remember that it's protecting you the more complex it is, the more it protects you.
Yep.
And it has to meet this minimum standard of complexity. Yep. And, the minimum standard of complexity that I gave her is actually well beyond the minimum standard of complexity that we enforce in this one particular organization.
Yep.
And this one particular organization, who will remain nameless,
Yep.
insists on lower than, say, every other organization. So,
well,
You may have set her on the right path. Once she starts using these complex passwords, she may continue to use that. You did a good thing.
absolutely.
Well, I think so. We have a password creator that we made ourselves, and I'm not going to get into how it works, but most systems require a password at least 8 characters, and I think our generator generates a minimum of 12 characters because it's that much more better.
Sure.
There you go.
It's full of goodness.
It is full of goodness. Yes. All right. Making complex passwords. What's the most important thing in a complex password?
Variety.
Variety. Length. So the example that Les gave us was, I like dogs, and I is spelled UIE. Like has a character replacement where they replace the E with 3. Dogs replace the O with a 0, exclamation point at the end. But a better password is, I really do like dogs, exclamation point, and then I just replace the I with a 1. So there's less variation going on, but it's much longer, and it's still a phrase that, maybe this isn't a great phrase because I do like dogs. Maybe I should put an animal that I don't like and just say, I really like baboons. And
right.
I have nothing against baboons.
There goes mine. There goes my password.
You knew about my baboon thing.
So you had a really good one, a good idea too, mnemonic devices.
Yes.
I love this one. What is it?
A Logitech, which is I had speakers.
Yep.
And I was trying to think of something in regard to mnemonic devices, and I saw the Logitech, and I was thinking, what is a good acronym that I can pull out of Logitech? And I came up with, look out, girls, I teach eccentric children hula. And this is actually a lot of the times when I'm coming up with passphrases, I do come up with acronyms that I can quickly spit out with things that are around my desk at home. But especially with acronyms, once I hit them once or twice, they're stuck with me pretty well.
Yeah, no, it's a good one to remember.
And Logitech, it's one of those brands that certainly we have headphones or speakers or mice or.
If you have a computer, you probably have gotten a Logitech device at some point.
Right. So it was one of those things that you could pull an acronym out of it pretty fast, and it's certainly long. It has length and complexity, and will serve as a pretty good password word for somebody who's listening to this podcast.
Yep, there we go.
Absolutely.
All right, what is a password manager?
It is a gift to mankind.
Does all your remembering.
Do you guys use password managers?
Absolutely.
Nope, you don't? Okay. That's your password manager?
Yes.
I do for work.
Okay.
Because I tend to, on the weekends, forget my login for work because it's not something that I came up with.
Oh, okay.
So I will forget my various passwords for work. over 2 days because it's just
Well, we use so many passwords here on a
Yeah,
daily basis. I have to have and I have 2 vaults. I have a vault for my own personal stuff and a vault for work. So if I ever needed to give up that work vault, that would be okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, password manager is just a piece of software to store your passwords. The good ones out there like 1Password, LastPass, it will sync it to all of your devices. So you install it on every device and it keeps track of it, and it'll even do some auto login stuff for you and browsers. And so like all my bank passwords, I don't know. They're 64 characters long, random letters and numbers, and as long as I have my phone or I'm near a computer, which is the only way I'm going to access that bank account, I can get into it and not have to remember. Your browser is not a good password manager. When it says, "Do you want me to save your password?" I always hit never, and the reason is because if you're letting your browser autofill and it has all this information about you, there are forms out there, web forms, where you're just putting in some basic information, not a password, but you can have a hidden password field. You can make forms that have hidden fields in the background. They're on the web page, you just don't see them because they're marked as hidden, and it could auto fill that password into that field. So I think Chrome and Firefox they're finding ways around that, obviously, but the hackers are always one step ahead, or at least they're keeping up. All right, some other things I wanted to talk about. This thing came up recently where certain websites have code that are kind of, keeps track of what you're doing. There's cookies on your computer, and there's all sorts of other things going on. And some forms will actually grab your information before you actually hit submit. So if you accidentally put in the password to a different thing that you're trying to log into, like you put in your email password into your banking system, and your banking system is grabbing all that information, you now just gave your bank your email password. So just be very careful when typing in your password into forms. Make sure you're at the proper site typing in the proper password. Security questions, we don't even have to go into this, because if you've ever done one of those Facebook things where it says, fill in these 35 things about you, chances are a few of those were security questions that you answered on some sort of,
Some of those sites have you make your own security question, which I think is great, because you can do something that no one would know other than yourself or
Yep.
your wife or whatever.
It was good practice for a while to do fake answers, but then you don't remember the fake answers. So that's where the password manager comes in, because you just put the fake answers in there. Two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication is always a good idea. Passwords were it's one of those things that was around since the beginning of computers and the internet, because they needed something, and instead of developing something better over time, we just increase complexity policy. So now we're seeing things like multi-factor authentication, fingerprint identification, facial recognition. Windows Hello, if you see Les and Courtney using it, sit down, and it has a 3D image of their face stored in the computer, and they sit down and it just logs them right in. So genius.
Absolutely.
I think we'll be seeing a lot more of that in the future.
That is, I think, where we're headed, especially the more complex our machines get, the more that we use them for every single thing that we do, the more it's going to be necessary that becomes our security solution. That's what we'll see. And that's why things like this are important to understand, why it's important to be secure. This information is precious, and we need to guard it really, keep it close to our chest.
With that outbreak of the malware at the end of March this year that was attacking all the Internet of Things, all the cameras, all of the
Yep.
scanners, whatever could get his hands on, would make it tougher to.
Absolutely.
How do you do a facial recognition for a camera, a dumb camera that, but the log on for those things are usually admin and a password, but
Yep.
no more. I mean, those are going to be changed and more complex. Rather, you're not going to be able to guess the password.
I guess I didn't even think about that. I mean, not only do you have to worry about your logins, but you now have to worry about the devices in your home, your Echoes and your Alexas and your Siris and Google Homes. Like, there's passwords on there. There's code vulnerabilities that get exploited, and people get into these things. So yeah, good passwords on everything, not just internet browsing. I think that's going to kind of cover it.
I think so.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. That was awesome.
Yeah,
All right.
good time.
Let's do this again sometime.
Go Rader podcast.
Yeah.